A woman I had never seen in my life called the cops on me because she couldn't unlock my own cabin door. 30 neighbors stood watching as she waved fake paperwork like it was gospel, and for a second I honestly thought my life was over. But when the officer turned eyes wide and whispered, "Madam Judge," her entire empire of lies collapsed in front of everyone. It all started on a Friday evening. I'd just pulled into Pine Ridge after a brutal week handling insurance claims, ready for some peace and quiet at my cabin. My wife Elena was away at mandatory judicial training in Toronto. She wouldn't be back until Monday. I figured I'd have the whole weekend to myself, a little reading, maybe fix that deck board that had been loose for months. But the first thing I heard stepping out of my car wasn't the sound of birds or the wind in the pines. It was sobbing. Loud, dramatic, over-the-top sobbing, echoing from the steps of the community center. There she was, a blonde woman sitting on the concrete surrounded by half a dozen of my neighbors, waving around some official-looking papers like she was conducting a damn orchestra of sympathy. "He's been threatening me," she cried, pointing straight at me the moment I appeared. And just like that, every head turned my way. Sarah and Tom Mitchell, neighbors who'd had Elena and me over for dinner last month, looked at me like I was a criminal. I stood there stunned. I didn't even know this woman, but she knew me, knew my wife's job at the courthouse, knew our anniversary date, knew details about my insurance work I'd only shared with close friends. That chill that runs down your spine when you realize someone's been watching you. Yeah, that hit me hard. Her name, I found out, was Catherine Stone. And she was good, too good. She wasn't just crying, she was performing. Voice cracking at all the right moments, tissue in hand, like a stage prop, spewing words like community standards and protecting families. She even dropped Elena's name, insinuating I was some bitter husband abandoned by a judge wife. Then she declared herself the elected community representative, something I'd never even heard of in Pine Ridge. Fake board, fake violations, fake authority. And yet my neighbors nodded like sheep. By Saturday morning, the damage was everywhere. I was kicked out of the neighborhood chat overnight. Catherine had hosted an emergency safety meeting at the Mitchell's house with donuts and a PowerPoint presentation about me. She spread edited videos, fake texts, even built an online group called Pine Ridge Community Watch. Suddenly, people I'd lent tools to shared barbecues with were crossing the street when I walked by. Local businesses started refusing service. My world shrank in a matter of hours. What cut deepest was Bob Wilson, my best friend for 7 years. He was edgy, glued to his phone, asking weird, probing questions about Elena's job. I glimpsed his screen once, messages from someone labeled KS Target confirmed at home. Proceeding with Phase 2. Bob brushed it off as work stuff, but he's a contractor. Contractors don't use surveillance lingo. Then came the avalanche of fake documents in the mail. Property reassessments jacking my cabin value, sky-high violation fines that didn't even exist in the county. Code inspection demands with seals just a little off. As an insurance guy, I spotted the mistakes right away. The wrong fonts, the wrong numbering systems. But to an untrained eye, it all looked terrifyingly real. And that was the point. The breaking point came Sunday at the so-called community tribunal. Catherine packed the community center with 30-plus residents, complete with poster boards, charts, stacks of witness statements. I walked in to see my life shredded on slides, while neighbors I'd trusted whispered like they were at some courtroom drama. Even Bob got up there, shaky and pale, confirming her lies. My best man at my wedding, selling me out to save his own skin. I tried defending myself. God knows I tried, but every word I said was turned against me. Actions speak louder than words. Community safety comes first. They had rehearsed responses ready for everything. It was a kangaroo court verdict decided before I opened my mouth. When they voted 32-3 to condemn me, it felt like my execution. Walking back to my vandalized cabin. Respect community standards, spray-painted in red across the door, eggs dripping down the windows, a slashed tire, I honestly thought about giving in. Catherine had flyers out for a block party celebrating my removal. I sat there thinking maybe I should just sign over the deed, cut my losses, disappear. Maybe I was the problem. That was the lowest point, questioning myself, wondering if I was crazy, if I'd somehow brought this on. But then Bob came over crying like a kid confessing everything. Catherine had been his client years ago on a project that tanked. She held $25,000 in penalties over his head, blackmailing him into spying on me. She'd been planning this whole campaign for months, gathering dirt, manipulating fears, turning neighbors into her soldiers. And that's when it hit me. It wasn't just about me. This was bigger. This was revenge against Elena, against a judge who'd sentenced her 3 years back for fraud. And if Catherine thought she could destroy us with forged papers and sob stories, she hadn't seen Elena in action. Monday morning was the grand finale. Catherine rolled up with a fake county inspector, fake uniforms, fake badges, fake jargon, and my neighbors flocked like it was the Super Bowl. She strutted to my cabin door with Bob's spare key ready to inspect and probably plant whatever evidence she needed. Except the key didn't work. 5 minutes of jiggling muttering about compatibility issues, sweat forming on her forehead, while the crowd started murmuring. Sarah Mitchell even called county dispatch, no inspection scheduled, no authorization number in the system. The mask was cracking. And then desperate Catherine dialed 911 claiming I'd modified locks to block an official inspection. Within minutes, police cruisers rolled in, lights flashing, Catherine crying about how unsafe she felt. She had the crowd parroting her story, neighbors nodding along like trained actors. The senior officer, Smith, took statements, called dispatch, and got the same answer: no record of any inspection. Catherine scrambled, babbling about system errors, emergency protocols. But I knew the tide was turning. My phone buzzed Elena's text. Landing now. Taxi to cabin. 15 minutes. Hold on. And then it happened. Black sedan pulls up, door opens, and Elena steps out. Sharp black business suit, county court ID, gleaming briefcase in hand, eyes like ice. Officer Smith froze mid-sentence. "County Judge Martinez," he whispered, almost dropping his paperwork. The crowd fell silent. Mouths hung open. Neighbors who'd been ready to string me up yesterday now looked like they wanted to sink into the ground. Sarah clutched Tom's arm like she'd seen a ghost. Parents pulled their kids close, realizing they'd been attacking a judge's family. Catherine, for the first time, looked terrified. Elena walked straight up, calm and controlled, addressing Smith like they'd met in court before. "Officer, I understand there's been confusion regarding my family and property. This involves false inspection claims and harassment campaigns." She opened her briefcase, pulled out Catherine's case file, and read it aloud. "Fraud convictions, probation terms, prohibition from contacting judicial families." The crowd gasped like it was the big reveal in a murder mystery. Catherine's mask shattered. She screamed, voice shrill, "Your husband was weak. I turned the whole neighborhood against him in 3 days. It was beautiful watching him suffer." Elena didn't even blink. "Miss Stone, you've just confessed a criminal conspiracy in front of 30 witnesses and a police officer. That alone violates your probation." Smith's radio crackled, "Probation violation confirmed, detective en route," and right there in front of all the neighbors who had cheered her on, Catherine Stone was handcuffed and shoved into the back of a squad car. Watching her taken away wasn't triumphant, it wasn't joyous, it was a gut punch of relief after days of hell. She'd tried to strip me of my reputation, my friendships, my home. She almost won. Almost. But the second she underestimated who Elena really was, her whole empire of lies collapsed. And that's the lesson I'll never forget. When someone builds power on fear and deception, it only takes one moment of truth to bring the whole thing crashing down.